Yes, Dr. Lemmon here, and this is, I think, number 3 of my big view. How many pieces there'll be into it just depends on, I guess, how quickly I get bored with it. But this is most certainly segment 3 of the big view. And if you remember, my goals were to look at influence, how we get influence, how we define that, and what function that has. And so that's kind of what I'm preparing to kind of touch on maybe in this segment 3, right? Where we left off is that we just got introduced to the idea of consciousness and some of the things that we can play with it. We're really looking at being part of this logical world that we come into play, but we have another phenomena that's totally not logical that we can play with, and that's imagination. So the way I look at it, there's actually 2 different games, right? So let's talk for a second about the logical world. In the logical world with really good predictions, we can then get on a path that would take us to some type of a goal. Okay, so what is this logical world? This logical world is just a range. It's literally just a range. Like you look out the window and you see a certain range. If you, in the prairies of Kansas, a range might be bigger. Texas, maybe even bigger. But downtown New York, a range is going to be pretty small. It's a range. Literally, it has defined parameters called Planck's constant. The smallest piece, the largest piece. We can't process anything smaller or anything larger. It's just a range. We are literally imagining us in a range somewhere that is all defined and structured, which tells me what? Someone had to imagine the range. So where did it start? The system that produces imagination, that creative element piece, obviously created the range. Why would they want to have that range? And what are the criterion for this system? The system likes things being in a state of balance. We could talk about that for a long time, but I'm trying to keep this within reason of the big view, right? So it's kind of like, think of a raft, and you've got a raft out there and you want to cross a waterway. You want to get a bunch of boxes to the other side. Well, you've got the raft out there and you start throwing things on it. Well, if you put it all on one side, it's just going to flip. It has to be balanced. So if you start to look at that, you can then put a box on this side, put a box on this side, put a box on that side, put a box on this side. You can get a lot on that raft. As long as it doesn't start to sink, you're doing pretty good. And then you just kind of swim it across or drag it across or pull it across or whatever the other side. Most certainly, it has to have an element of balance. I look at this whole logical system as a deterministic, chaotic system. It's deterministic because no matter what path you take, the end is entropy. We die, right? This is not about living longer, right? Because live longer, like another month, another year, another 6 years, then we die. It's not about getting richer because no matter how much money you have, you die. It's not about being the most beautiful person because in the end you die, right? So it's a deterministic chaos. You can go down in a bifurcations, you can go any which way and still wind up dead, right? Now, whether you die sooner or later, maybe that you can influence, but it's just a game other than that. I call it a game because it's very predictable. It's a place where we could use predictability to influence things and play into it. And we don't have to worry about it because it's limited to a range. It's got a playground with a fence around it, right? That's the range. And we're just playing in there. The most important things, I think, in there is to remember that we have to find some place of balance. So we have to keep that in the back of our mind. But number one, we're making predictions always because we know the structure, 2 + 2 is 4. We understand all that, but there's anomalies even within the structure, which is really kind of strange, right? Then the other element involved is that we can imagine all kinds of things that will not work in the structure. So they won't work. We can still imagine them, but they won't work. So literally, like the rules of the game, if we're playing Monopoly, I could imagine a shortcut where I wouldn't have to go over someone's boardwalk and pay rent. But but it's not in the structure of the game. There's no shortcuts, not like Candyland, but it's no shortcut. So yeah, in my context, I look at this as like, this is a game, and in any game and any strategy we do, we start to influence it. And the best way we can influence it is start to imagine innovation, find different ways to get innovative, to be able to play into it, to engage in that. I think the engagement is the nature of the game, right? And that's the way I look at it. So Chris's big view, right? That's where we play in. So is there past lives and angels and demons and blah, 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 blah? Yeah, could we imagine all that stuff? Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with imagining all that stuff. Does all that stuff fit in a structured world? Well, if you think so, you're probably going to be talking to a psychologist, right? Because I don't find that in a structured world. Is it right or wrong? No, come on. In a structured world, the only thing right is the structure. But forget about right or wrong. It's just the structure. It's just a path. You can't go off the path. You have to get innovative to find a way off the path. Does the structured world change? Yeah, we're right now in a state of change, or the background in the structured world. It updates, it changes. It's kind of like this computer program that we're virtually in the middle of, and now all of a sudden it's all changing. I have no idea. Did we imagine it that way? Did you imagine it that way? I don't remember imagining any of this, but I'm getting old, so my imagination is still pretty sharp, but my memory is, I not only have I never been able to find it, it's getting scary, because if I could have found it, I could go back to it, but it's just kind of drifty at times. I still remember to get something to drink because I talk too much. All right. So we start to look at this game that we're in the midst of, and we say, wow, this could be fun. I mean, sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's not. So it's not fun when we make bad predictions and things don't work out real good. It's a lot more fun when we make good predictions. It's nice when I plan a trip and I get hotel reservations with deals, and I get to go to places, and I get free entries into things, and I get this and I get that, and these things work and that things work. And it's nice when I build a vision of what I want to do and I start to put things in it and it all flows into it. That feels kind of mystical, magical, because it's not normally part of the structured world. How do I influence it? Well, that's what the talk's all about. That's what my big view is. I have found that we can influence it. All of you guys either think you can influence it, or you think that you're going to spend your entire life digging around in the structure to find a path that's going to do what? Make us live 5 years longer, or make us a little healthier for that 5 years longer we live, or I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish. I have no idea. Eliminate suffering? I'm sorry. I think the conflict we get into is the fact that we argue over which is the right way and which is the structure, thinking that there's an absolute peace in that structure, that you can only go this way. That means those people even have a smaller range than a range called our universe. They don't even see the parameters of Planck's constant. They've narrowed it down too much, where they only see one path. So that's a bad influence. We really need to open that range up, get a little more influence into it, right? Play with it a little bit and allow people to influence us and open that up a little bit. That's what we're trying to engage in and play with. So last time I talked, I introduced you to a little bit of a parallax, all right? Parallax means different views of something. So we're sitting there, and inside of who I am, I'm sitting there saying, I have no clue what I'm going to do, right? So, it doesn't do good to sit there for weeks and months and years in a world where I don't know what to do. I have had a lot of people over the last 70 years come to me and Chris and say, I don't know what to do. Like, wow, where are you looking? Well, I just can't get a sense of what I'm supposed to be doing. Where are you looking? Right? You only have one view. Do you think these two eyes and that brain is all hooked up just to that, and you can't imagine something else? Do you think that you're not imagining that? Do you think your eyes are taking pictures like a camera, and you got it on a database somewhere like your computer, it doesn't work that way. Read some books. It's all symbols. It's all just symbols. That message going to your brain is not a picture, it's a symbol. It's all symbols. We're in a game, it's all just symbols. And we're mapping our way around it. Someone imagine all those symbols. Most certainly can we influence all that stuff because it's all fluid to some degree. Most certainly to some degree. So that's why we're playing this. We're trying to see within this dynamic piece, it's what every game is, within a dynamic piece of structure and rules, how can we influence it? How can we have fun with it? Is this not something to have fun with? People take it too serious, and all their life they're real serious about it, and they're very sad and they're very disenchanted, and they're always saying, well, I can't do that, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I've got to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. And well, okay, I'm not saying that the structure is not there. I'm saying all those things are true. And can you imagine it differently? And if you can imagine it differently, then how are you going to influence it? So if I just make it up, then it's very likely that those predictions are really not designed to be in this game. They might work somewhere else, but they most certainly are not in this game because this game's got a smaller range. It's not unlimited. People come to me and said, oh, I just know I have greater things in life. Well, okay, great. Imagine greater things in life and influence the game you're in to make that happen. If that's important to you, what has utility to you? What has value to you? I never sat around when I was 14 years old wanting to be 78 years old. I never thought about that at all when I was 14, right? I thought about a lot of other things. I was starting to think a little bit about girls. All of that was coming into play. It's like total different game. It's changed. The rules didn't change. It's changed. Where's the bulk of our memory? Just a small parcel of our life. Those late teens and early 20s is like kind of where most of our memory sits, right? It's just so intriguing to me that people take this whole thing serious, and then they get really mad when people imagine it differently. I've had people say, you can't do that so many times to me and staff I had, and then we turn around and we do it, you know? And then there are other times we start to do something and I'm looking at it and says, wow, that's kind of interesting. I don't know. If we pull this off, it'll be intriguing, but I'm not sure we'll reach our conclusion. I'm not sure the influence is going to take us where I think it's going to take us, but most certainly going to take us somewhere different. Let's play with it and see what really unfolds. I like confidence. I like a little bit of arrogance, but over arrogance gets you in trouble, right? So I like to be somewhere around 51%. That makes me feel comfortable enough to move forward and say, yeah, let me try it, right? And then I find I don't know how to do it, so I can practice a little bit and I can get better at it. I was playing a game about a year ago, and I had never played it before, and we were playing this game. It was an outdoor game, bunch of kids, bunch of family, and we were playing it. And I'm just kind of watching probability, the angles. I'm just running my logical world thing, right? And so I'm figuring out all the things, and it's my turn to get into the game. And it's like, okay, I got the structure down in my head, but I can't quite perform. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. You got an idea how to do it, but it takes a while to find balance. It always takes a while to find balance. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying, wow, I need a little parallax, another view. So I sit down, I relax, close my eyes, and I go outside and I say, where do I need to put my right foot? Where's my body position need to be? If I'm going to do this, where do I have to go? It's a movement game. What do I have to do? Where do I find that balance piece? Because I'm doing it, I'm getting out of balance, and it's not coming out the way I imagine it. So I need to get outside and come back in. It's just a parallax. It's just from a different view. We don't get a big argument from the logical world because they say, oh, it's just you're imagining it from a different view. Oh, okay, that's fine. Whatever makes it happy. I really think that this whole thing got created, and we're just in there. And as we start to play with it, when it goes through a growth change like it's going through right now, it just doesn't get more complicated. It just divides all the pieces in half. Where I had to carry one thing, now I'm carrying two things. The two things weigh the same as the one thing, but it just made more pieces. That adds to the complexity, but also enhances the influence. We have more things to kind of play with. All right, so let's play in that conscious world with another element in here. But I'm trying to get 2 or 3 elements in these big views to show the potential of playing with that. So my model for you with consciousness is like a file on the computer. So all of a sudden I got a file on the computer that says, okay, here's a file for Chris. So somewhere when I was a teen, I thought, oh, everybody was smoking cigarettes. So I thought, well, I'll try smoking a cigarette, right? So I light up and I'm smoking a cigarette, and just like, got me a little dizzy smoking it. You couldn't breathe very well. I wasn't all that excited. Maybe it looked kind of cool to someone. I'm not all that impressed with looking cool. I tried it a little bit and I thought, okay, this is like kind of silly, I don't think I want to do this. I could feel the difference after just playing with occasionally, right? So I thought, okay, I have made a decision. I'm not going to be a smoker. So that was somewhere around age 14. I just decided, okay, that's it. I don't care what people do. I'm not going to be a smoker, because I can already feel that it's influencing me in a negative sort of way. I didn't have the breathing capacity. It affected me pretty quickly. I could see where over quite a few years of doing that, it would have a long range effect. So I said, okay, forget it. I'm not doing it. That was a parallax view. I was looking at a view, not right now, feeling me, being cool. I was looking at a bigger view. I was coming from a different perspective, looking at it over time, looking at like, what's of value to me? Is it important to me to look cool, or is it important for me to be able to move around? It was more important for me to move around than to look cool. So that's the choice that I made, right? Do you understand? It's getting more data, more information, and influencing that kind of stuff. So then later on in life, come over and says, oh, you want to smoke? And I said, no, I don't smoke. And they said, oh, you were afraid of getting sick? And I said, no, I figure we're all going to get sick and die. I'm not worried about that. I just see the cost involved with smoking affects my breathing. So I don't want to do it. So I was like, if you want to do it, go ahead. I don't care. I can imagine those dear friends that were trying to influence me way back then are probably sitting somewhere in front of their television with their ashtray going, coughing and, lighting up another one all these years later, if they're still alive. So yeah, this is what we do when we're engaged in a game. We don't just look at something, right? I had someone the other day, I'm driving down the road and we see an accident, right? Car, motorcycle, truck, whatever, all kinds of whatever. I'm just busy trying to maneuver because I realize everybody's slowing down to look, and I just really want to get flowing with the traffic. I'm not interested in seeing another accident. But then when we arrived where we were arriving, we're having a cup of coffee, and they said, oh, I figured out what happened. This and this and this and this and this and this and this. I'm going, wow, that's kind of interesting. So that's an outside view. They had to close their eyes or just go into a coma, trance, and imagine it a different way. How could that have happened? The vehicles being where they're at, how could that happen? They're running a logical system of a possibility of how it could have happened. It doesn't guarantee it was right, but they said, I figured it out. They're sitting there with a certain amount of certainty or confidence and even a little arrogance saying, I figured it out. I know what happened. Like, wow, this did this and this did that and this hit this and this spun out over there. And that's what happened. I've been thinking about it and I got it all figured out. Like, wow, that's intriguing. I don't know. Maybe I missed the opportunity to figure it out. I wasn't that interested. I was more interested in trying to avoid that type of scenario that I just solved for me, because I was trying to maneuver and there's people with their phone taking pictures, driving down the road. It's like, what does it matter with you people? It's like, right, where's the utility for you in life? Those people, something happened. Pay attention to you. Figure this all out. So I just said, well, that's good. That you made some really good assumptions, and there's a really good probability that that might have been that way, although it could have been a different way, because we'll never know. I don't think that we could get a copy of the police report. They probably wouldn't give it to us because we were just looky-loos. So how do we define that? Do we even need to define that? Today on websites and stuff, I see people come up with all these crazy ideas, and people are looking at this thinking, there's that old guy with these crazy ideas. Where did he come from, right? None of this is going to work into science. I'm not advocating it works into science. I'm advocating an influence. We can influence all this stuff in some way, shape, or form. My gosh, we have done that. I have a gate on the side of my house, and when the wind blows, it blows the gate open, it blows it closed. When you open a gate, then it kind of goes with the wind. And sometimes when you're picking up trash cans, leaves and stuff, that the gate's slamming you. So I just put a cable on it and a weight on it. So when I open a gate, it goes all the way open and it stays open till I'm ready. And then I push it shut. That's all I did, right? So I influenced something that was hanging well. It moved well. It had a nice sense of balance. It was on a post. It moved, it closed, it opened. It was really consistent, very reliable gate, but it would slam me every now and then, right? And I've got a shed right next to it. So I come out of the shed carrying something, and I got this gate flying into me, right? So I just put a weight on it to hold the gate open. That's an influence that we can produce to make a different quality in life, which is utility, right? We can do those influences. I bought cable to do that years ago. And then I started telling my wife, and she said, oh, we don't need to do that. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't do it. The cable's been sitting here for quite a while. And so finally, I just thought one day I'm sitting here because we've been locked down, and I see that cable laying there, and I thought, wow, I should just go ahead and do that. So I took a piece of walnut wood, which I found in a scrap heap of scrap wood. I polished it all up, put a lacquer coat on it, put some screws in it, put a cable up. And now I got that weight on the door. So I've influenced things. So now the gate is not going to be slamming me anymore. Does it make somebody right or somebody wrong? Was it a better decision? Should I have done it sooner? Should I have done it? You know, none of that is important. But come on, you guys, there's no value in that stuff. But when you look at something you should have done and you didn't do you feel bad? Well, why did you invoke that influence on you? Now you start to see the way we think. So let's go look at some of those files on your computer, right? So you should have a big file. I have a big file called Chris, and I type into that file things that I'm doing, right? I might type in notes, subset files. I might have notes about my health. I type in foods that I eat and I watch them. And it's like, if I have a reaction to them, then I start to make notes. I stay off them a little bit. I document a lot of stuff in a file called Chris. But I have lots of people that come to me and they've got these little short files that they get stuck into a loop, right? I used to specialize in people that were possessed, whatever that is. But bottom line, they're just possessed by a little short piece of a strip, a file on a computer that has their name on it. So I could easily be Chris, this crazy guy that's talking about these ideas, or I could have been Chris that had some silly idea that thought would work and still upset because it didn't work, right? I can remember building a fort one time, and I thought it was a really cool fort, and all my friends and everything, we would hang out in the fort, and then somebody came by and bulldozed the whole thing, and I was like, boy, I was really upset for a little while. And then I had actually a friend of mine that said, Chris, why are you so upset? It was on someone else's property. We were illegally there, and it wasn't very safe. So it's a good thing we never got caught in there. We could have got arrested as kids, or at least got in trouble. It's like, wow. And I had to stop and think a little bit. Here I was 15, 16 years old, and I'm thinking, maybe 15. And I'm saying, wow, I got a wise friend there. Yeah. I'm being influenced because I felt like I was violated when I was actually violating someone else's property and doing things that weren't safe and talking all my friends into doing it. So I was influencing them in a very negative sort of way. I did it all because I thought it was fun and it was interesting. We had the club and we were, and now I look at that and I go, wow, that is, my range was too small. I really needed to get bigger. I needed to expand that out. Okay, now there's a little caveat to this. For whatever reason, I can go on my computer and I can delete a file. I know the whole story. It gets moved somewhere else, blah, blah, blah. But okay, that's fine. I can delete a file. It's gone. But in this piece, we don't seem to be able to delete files because of the fact that it's anchored very much on balance. And because of the fact that it's predictive, and because of the fact that it tends to store everything. So it gets a huge database to make better predictions. So it doesn't like the idea of you wiping out pieces. But what we can do on a computer is I can take a file and copy it into another one, copy it over top of it. Literally, I'm just transferring. I can change it. I can modify it. There is something that we call an influence. I can take the little short file. What I did when I was growing up, I took that little short file. Someone violated my fort and me and my trust and my friends, and I was able to copy over top of that. It's really good news that someone did that because I could have got hurt. They could have got hurt. I could have got in trouble. Wow. So I'm no longer. Okay. I just got a warning notice. I had to plug the battery in. So I plugged the battery in. So it influenced me because I didn't want this thing going dead on us. I think we're back and still in play. So you can take those files, those little short files, and you can layer something over top of it. So I said, I worked a lot with possessions. People would come to me and they're possessed. They'd be flopping around on the floor. They'd be doing something. Matter of fact, when I first met Deborah, she was sitting side chair with me and I was doing a counseling with a lady and she fell on the floor and was flopping around. And I told Deborah, could you put your foot on her so she don't hurt herself? And Deborah thought, that's kind of what, like what? So what was she possessed by? She was possessed by a little tiny loop. That's what she was possessed by. She couldn't get out of that little tiny loop. Most of the time it wasn't there for her, but it was always influencing her unconsciously. Most of the time she wasn't consciously in it. All of a sudden a trigger would fire, something she would remember that was in there, and she would go into that little loop. And there she was flopping around on the floor in some type of fear or animosity or anger or frustration. It had an emotional energy, the energy to make something happen that didn't get accomplished. In our fort, I had this vision of a group of us being friends forever, you know, whatever that is, and be hanging out together and marching through life. And that was really kind of a silly dream, but that was a dream. And so there was as a vision of a 15-year-old, and it all fell apart. And I started realizing, wow, I have energy in there because what? I'm defending it still. I'm enraged. It's like, wow. So I was able to drop in a bigger picture. Oh, I could put a group together, but not in a dangerous situation. I really need to have a bigger range to do this, right? And so that's what I started doing. I started putting together a group of people. I took my neighborhood group and we all joined a YMCA, and we would go on a certain night during the week and work out together. So we had our friendship in a safer environment. You see how I matured or grew up the picture. Growing it up, maturing it is getting into a bigger range. You may need some help when you get into some of those little short snippets. Boy, they really lock you down. You have seen people irate, frustrated, bent out of shape because their back's against the wall and they had nowhere to go. And some people, you're kind of walking on eggshells because if you say the wrong thing, they just go ballistic, right? Wow, that's pretty amazing. You can sit down and you can work those. Find someone that's friendly with you, that's going to sit with you a little bit and not argue with you. Go into those and start to get that feeling and play with it a little bit. Have someone there that can hold on to you, can bring you back out to it, can say, okay, now take a little bit of a memory of the big file called you and drop it in on top of that. Just copy it in so we can just get rid of those little snippets. Start to, you see how it's an influence we can produce. God, all these people got stories. They come to me and say, people like that make me mad. I go, wow, that's interesting. You got a hot button there. People like that make you mad. Okay. We could go down that road. We could wander into that and see. But before we do that, I'd have to say, what's your value? What are you worthwhile? Is the only thing in life your value that people make you mad? Well, I've met people like that. Everybody makes them mad, right? So it was hard to find something of value. I have met people that have been through so much abuse, it was hard for them to find a happy or delighted moment in their life, right? I can remember working with a lady one time and I said, give me a happy moment in your life. Tell me something that worked out. You know, you had a nice birthday party when you were 12, or you got a first date when you were 15 or something, or someone was in love with you, sent you flowers, or a happy moment. Where's a happy moment in your life? And a lady was so abused in childhood that she said in the wintertime when she was walking home from school, you know, with holes in her shoes and blah, blah, blah. The story goes on and on, you know, martyrs are martyrs. But she said there was a church on the way home. And I said, oh, you went into the church. I'm thinking, wow, okay, whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's an inspiration. It's for some people. She said, no, I didn't go to the church. She said, alongside the church, they had a basement and they had a grate out there on the side where air could come up. They had windows in the basement and the heat would be on. And I could go out on the side of the church and step on that grate and squat down real close to the metal in the grate. And that warm air from the windows downstairs would come up and I could get warm because it was so cold going home. I'd just be shivering. And so I'd get there and I'd get warm because if I walked in the door and I was shivering, then they started yelling at me. It just like, I just felt completely beaten to start out with. If I was warm and I was feeling a little better, I could hedge them and influence a little better. But she found a useful tool in a beat up, abusive life. She found a little useful tool. She could get into situations to change her attitude a little bit about it not being hopeless. And then all of a sudden, she started having some empowerment, small, but something's better than nothing. We start with a little piece and we work with it and we work with it. Do you get this? And we get it stronger and stronger. And I'm looking at that saying, wow, that's interesting. That's how she got to my door. It's like, wow, I think we could work with some of that, right? There was only so much you could do with her. She had a lot of issues, but most certainly made some changes in her life. For a while, she started doing retreats with people. She started doing events. She started being a little friendlier, but she always had that hard edge. So it was really kind of tough. You always had to walk on eggshells around here. It would have taken a lot of time. Interesting, people don't always want to do more work. They do one or two things, and at that point, they get a little intimidated. I've had people already that I worked with a little bit and their whole life got better. And then 2-3 years later, it started falling apart on them again. And they came to me and they said, we need to do some more work. And I said, well, I told you there were some more, I call them speed bumps. It's kind of like you run your hand across it, you feel a little bump, right? So I could feel those bumps. And so I knew there was some in there. And we started working on a next layer of bumps. And in the midst of that, one day she said, you know, this is too emotional and too hard. I don't really want to do this. So don't come back anymore. And so the next call I got from her was about 6 months later when she asked me to come say goodbye to her. She was dying from cancer. I don't know. I don't know why that is. So let's talk about that, because we're saying how we can get an influence. We can get an influence or feel it because I won't train with someone, right? That's me being somewhere else, right? And entrainment is really simple. I just take that mask that I have out in front that says, hi, I'm Chris, that's the badge I'm wearing, right? And I just take that and I move it aside a little bit. I make someone else more important for a second. I lose that arrogance. I lose the demand. I lose whatever. And I just sit with them for a second. I don't lose the idea of who I am. I'm not becoming them. I'm not joining their club. I'm just sampling them. It's like, give me this sales pitch. I'll listen. I'm not going to buy, but give me the sales pitch and I'll listen, because I know you and I'm just going to respect you. So tell me what you're saying and I'll tell you my opinion. All right. That's it. So I just put that aside. And as I start to get that, I can start to feel a sense of the flow of them. Literally, it's kind of like as they're talking, I'm running a hand across a table. I can feel little bumps in it. Like, wow, there's a little bump. There's a little bump. So I do that with my hands because I'm a little bit tactile. Other people can do it like hearing a music, and they'll hear a sound and it'll go beep, 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 and it'll beep. So there's lots of different ways. Depends how you uniquely process things in life. Do you look for bumps? Do you look for sounds? Do you look for anomalies? Like, and if you walk in and notice there's a little blur in a paint over there, or a brush mark that somebody didn't do a good job of painting that wall, and you walk in a restaurant, do you notice things like that? What do you notice? What do you attend to? What catches your attention? Where's your expertise? Where's that piece that you seem to be more aware of than others? You utilize that piece about you. I can get a feel for that and go, wow, there's bumps there. There's undulations. Wow. And now ask her questions, and I'll run over those undulations a couple of times. And I go, wow, you got some little snippets in there. Let's just pick one of them. Just take one. So back up a little bit. Let's just find that. Let's find that bump. There it is. Take a deep breath and let's just go into that bump. Imagine being in an experience that's not right now, but is somewhere in your memory. Remember, we don't know where memory is at. So you're going to have to journey there. I'm not sure what that looks like, but it's not walking. So you're going to have to imagine being in that memory. And when you imagine being in that memory, all of a sudden your whole body goes, whoa, now I feel totally different. Oh my goodness. Now I'm frightened. Now I'm hurting. Now this is just like, wow, this is kind of interesting. So we work with that for a little bit. And then I can bring that larger file of them in and just bring it in and say, hey, do you remember that you're an amazing artist, that you're a painter and you've done 500 paintings? You've sold a few even? Do you remember that? And they're kind of like sitting there going, I just feel totally dejected. Somebody told me I should give up art because I'm horrible. But yeah, somebody did. But right now you're a successful painter. Bring that into there. Feel that flowing in. As it starts to flow in, guess what? That file gets copied over top the other file. And you start to lose those little snippets. It's just kind of an interesting thing. You see how these are influences. They're influences. Do they work 100% of the time? They have some effect 100% of the time. Sometimes you have to do them a couple of times. Depends how much trauma, how much abuse, how much scar tissue there is, right? Really kind of tough, right? All right. So all those things are elements that we can start to play with. Okay. So what I'm doing in this talk, giving you the big view, I'm telling you where influences can play out, right? And I'm giving you little samples. Oh, there's a lot of variables, right? You can imagine, I can remember being at Stanford, and I had a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist, and he said, I have a patient that's possessed. She's flopping around. She's in a hospital. She can't figure out anything. She's just a nutcase. And they're releasing her into my care because I'm her therapist. I want to bring her over and meet you at the center at Stanford and want you to work on her, Chris, because I've seen you work on other people and I'd like to see what we can do. I'm going to look for that little snippet, right? He couldn't find it in his style or system because it's auditory, right? So I went over there, sitting down, thinking I'm going to be sitting with her and we're going to be talking, or she's going to be laying down, we're going to be talking. But when I got over there, yeah, she was laying down on a blanket on the floor. And there was 34 psychiatrists in there to watch me. So it was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. So I didn't know I was going to put a show on, but I did. Within a half an hour, I had her sitting in a chair. And pretty soon she started getting cold and I had her pick up the blanket and wrap it around her. Little security thing, you know, she was kind of like bundled up, you know. As we progressed through that, then pretty soon she started getting warm and then she threw the blanket off. And then she got up and she started moving around. And then all of a sudden she sat down and she just started crying. And she took a deep breath and boom, there's this big bang you could hear in the walls, like something just hit the building. And she shook her head and she looked at me and she said, "Thank you. I think I'm back in now." Wow. Interesting. So, to my knowledge, I saw her a year and a half later. She came by, brought me a gift, right? Her whole life had changed. She got married. It's just like, it's an interesting piece. It was just a little snippet that she was caught in a cycle, couldn't get out of, something that happened in childhood. It didn't go well for some of us, right? I told you a story about a haircut. Some people had worse experiences than that, better believe, and maybe you did too. All right, that's enough chattering on. We get an idea of a view of where I mean by influences and how we can make that happen. There's lots and lots of patterns. I have hundreds and hundreds of workshops I've done, thousands of CDs that I have put out that have been training teachers to teach this stuff and play with these things and see what we can do. But I'm trying to give you, like, where do we go with beginning classes and where's our goal and what is the big view and what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to accomplish more utility, better quality of life. We're not trying to beat the game. We're not trying to become ascended masters. We're not trying to any of that kind of stuff. We're just simply trying to get a better quality, more utility in the game, more interaction with other people. We're trying to get a bigger range so we're not with our back against the wall, always struggling and battling something. We really want to be open to more things that come down. So thank you very much. It's been fun. It'll be interesting to see what the little bleep did in the middle of this. My battery was going dead. All right, thanks.